Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. Bohemian Rhapsody is about Queen, obviously. The film tells the true story of the band's beginnings, their rise in success, their struggles, their constant reinventions, their breakup, and ultimately getting back together again. However, in my personal opinion, I think it should have just been called Freddie Mercury, or just Mercury or something, because this is clearly his story. It's not really the band's story. I mean, we barely get any kind of glimpse of their history or their personalities or what they're going through unless they're in the scene with Mercury. Rami Malek plays Mercury in this movie, and most of us know him as Mr. Robot, although I personally knew him first from Breaking Dawn. Do not judge me, I love watching those movies because they're so bad they're good, okay? Again, I'm not judging anyone who likes those movies, but that's where I know him from. And I definitely think there was a lot of pressure for Malek to play this character because everyone who knows of Freddie Mercury knows he was a really eccentric person, not to mention he was just such a beloved person by so many Queen fans. And I don't claim to be a big expert of Freddie Mercury at all. I mean, I love the guy, believe me, and I love the Queen's music, but I've just never been one to pay a lot of attention to that. But I can definitely tell that Rami Malek did his research on this guy. He definitely didn't hold back on getting down what I assume are Freddie Mercury's mannerisms, as well as his really over-the-top performance style. And he also brings a lot of heart and vulnerability to this character, and he's clearly dedicated to tell Mercury's story about being a singer and his conflicts with drug addiction and his sexuality. You'll notice very quickly, though, that this movie feels so much like a lot of biopics that we've seen of people who have risen to success. And I know that this is based on what actually happened to this band, but the biggest problem I felt with this movie is that I constantly felt like I was just going through the motions of what happened. The band got together and they named their band Queen, and yeah, that part was surprisingly just kind of glanced over. And then they met a producer and they got signed and they made it big, and then they have that scene where they're like, we're not formulaic, man! And then they got more big, and then they broke up, and you get the idea. And it wouldn't be so bad if they actually went further into why all these different beats and tropes happen, but surprisingly they don't. They touch on how Freddie's father wasn't that impressed with him being a singer, and you'd think that that would be a subplot we'd go back to a lot in the movie, but I swear we only go back to it like once or twice. Once at the very beginning, very quickly in the middle, and then at the very end, and there's just like no payoff there. It just felt like it was there because that happens in a lot of movies. We have to touch on how the parents are not approving of the star. They'll also have some moments where they'll say, yeah, we're a family and we'll never break up and we'll never betray each other. But then a couple of scenes later, all of a sudden it's like, no guys, sorry, we're not a family anymore. I'm gonna leave. Okay, like, where'd that come from? Did I miss a scene? Did something happen? It's stuff like that happens that just makes me feel like we're not really going through the beats very naturally. So the story itself and the flow of the narrative really are not the strong points of this movie, and unfortunately for the average moviegoer, that's just gonna lead to a really sluggish experience. I feel like there was a greater focus to show us what happened rather than let us experience what happened. But I'm not trying to say that this movie was boring, actually far from it. The moments when they're focused on the music are actually really interesting, and it's such a unique perspective to see how and why so much of it was created and executed. And when they perform the music in a studio or a concert, there's just such a spirit and passion and a clear love of Queen's music. Too bad they just didn't seem to have as much thought and passion for a well thought out narrative. And the acting is still really good in this movie. Everyone works off each other so well, and in the moments where they're frustrated or vulnerable or going through a change, you can definitely feel that shift. And the movie is shot really well and looks amazing, so clearly there was dedication to capture the band and their performances. And the last part of the movie covers their performance at the Live Aid concert of 1985, and actually this is the part of the movie that I was the most impressed with. Because I don't know if they literally actually recreated that concert, but it sure felt like they did. And it's super impressive for a lot of reasons. First of all, this is the height of the musical energy in this movie. And it feels like a real concert, and like you're right right there on the stage with the band. And I don't mean to sound cliche, but thanks to the performances, music, camera angles, and editing, there's a real intense passion that just jumps off the screen during this concert. I'm sorry, I know that's really corny of me to say, but that's how I felt when I watched this. I really admire their dedication to make this one of the most poignant parts of the entire movie. And it's also amazing just how accurately they got everything down, from the clothes to the press people who are standing right in front of the stage, and even the smallest little details like the Pepsi and beer cups on the piano during the concert. And that is something to really be admired about this movie. They're very careful to capture visual details. And yes, because it really does seem like they completely recreated that 20-minute slot that they performed in, it can drag a bit, especially if you've already had a bit of a slow experience in this movie. But if you're a Queen fan, then that may not bother you, and I actually do still admire how much they were dedicated to recreating this. This movie is filled with biopic cliches, and it really does shortcut a lot of story beats, and it's also way more interested in telling you about Freddie Mercury than the band itself. But there's also no denying that there's just so many fun scenes in this movie, especially when they're performing the music and when Malek is just being Freddie. In fact, I like to call it out. I don't think that Malek is gonna have any issues with being nominated for a bunch of awards this year. But I wouldn't call it the biopic of the decade, and it's definitely not the greatest film about the origin of a legendary band. For the average moviegoer who is a huge Queen fan, I definitely think you will still really like this, and I think it's definitely worth it to see it in the theaters. But if you're not super familiar with Queen, or if you're just not a huge fan, then maybe wait till it's like available for streaming. So those are my thoughts on the film Bohemian Rhapsody. So now I want to know, what did you guys think of the movie? Also let me know, do you have a favorite Queen song? Do you have any fond memories of listening to Bohemian Rhapsody with your friends? And are there any other movies coming out soon that you want me to review? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below. Be sure to like and share. And if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I